You may have seen headlines over the weekend. There was a new book out, actually, related to this Justice Kavanaugh. And, he sits on the Supreme Court, Justice Kavanaugh. We had, I called it Kavanaugh Redux, I think. But as you likely recall, when Justice Kavanaugh was going through the confirmation process in the U.S. Senate, there was one main witness, Catherine Blasey Ford, who came forward claiming essentially that while she was in high school, this is like whatever it was, 36 years I think it was before this nomination process, but she claimed in high school that this Justice Kavanaugh, now married, 3 kids, been in public life in Washington, been working as an attorney in high-level positions in Washington, that he had sexually assaulted her in high school. You likely remember this. Kavanaugh hearing was huge. We had on the show a month or more ago, we had 2 women who authored a book about it, talking about how the whole Kavanaugh, the effort to make sure Kavanaugh could not get confirmed in the Supreme Court had been cooked up by the left long before President Trump had even decided which candidate for the Supreme Court he was going to finally nominate. The effort was set in place. The accusations were set in place. All the organized groups on the American left that just hate conservatism, hate President Trump, hate the rule of law, hate the Constitution. These people were ready to roll to attack whoever Trump nominated. Kavanaugh gets nominated, and you had, the Blasey Ford allegations, and the whole nation had to watch. And her story, of course, completely fell apart. And I'll tell you why I'm bringing this up today is that there are 2 women who are New York Times reporters, and their names are Robin Pogrebin and Kate Kelly. And actually, I'm assuming Robin is a woman. I don't even know. Maybe it's a man. But these 2 New York Times writers wrote a new book just out about the Kavanaugh confirmation process and all the different stories surrounding him. Back when Kavanaugh's nomination was happening, once this Blasey Ford came forward, other accusations came forward too. So the U.S. Senate, doing their job, investigates them, looks into them, and discovered hoax after hoax after hoax, lie after lie after lie. Some of those women who made up stories about Kavanaugh actually now were referred for prosecution, because you can't make up stuff like that trying to hold up a nomination. You can't lie to the Senate. It's like lying to the FBI. It's a crime. So all of the accusations which the left ginned up against Kavanaugh fell apart because there was nothing to them. So these 2 ladies, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino, brilliant authors, wrote this book. We had them on this case in this show, basically talking about all the falsity behind the Kavanaugh accusers and how once you looked into the story, there's nothing there. Because the left is so livid, still livid, that President Trump won the presidency in 2016, because they are livid that he's actually exercising presidential authority and nominating conservative justices to the Supreme Court who are actually committed to following the rule of law. Because they can't stand that, the attacks against Kavanaugh are ongoing. So now you have a new book, a book out by, as I say, these 2 reporters, Robin Pogrebin and Kate Kelly, the new book called The Education of Brett Kavanaugh and Investigation. These 2 clowns tried to pull up an allegation against Kavanaugh, labeling it as true. The New York Times runs the story. Oh, new allegation and terrible conduct. And he did this. It was from law school, from his time at Yale Law School, that at some frat party, he apparently did something that was described, of course, as grotesque. It was some gross sexual assault style thing. However, number one, this very allegation had already been raised, investigated, and laughably dismissed even by the Senate Judiciary Committee that was determined, the Democrats in the Senate Judiciary Committee determined to find any reason, any basis to stop Kavanaugh's nomination. So this allegation had already been investigated, found to be completely baseless. Number 2, the alleged victim, the woman allegedly involved in this thing that allegedly occurred at Yale Law School, has said to the Senate reporters, Senate investigators, to anyone she talks to, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any memory of that. That's her testimony. She didn't testify because she has nothing to say. It was just she doesn't even know what the complainer is talking about. But the person involved, the third reason the New York Times might have thought twice before they ran their idiotic headline, was that the lawyer involved in making this accusation, this new accusation against Kavanaugh, was a guy named Max Stier, who actually also went to Yale Law School. Obviously, this is an accusation from that time period. Went to Yale Law School, has been sideways with Kavanaugh for decades because they're not on the same side of the political aisle. And Stier was actually involved in the defense of Bill Clinton and his Monica Lewinsky episode at the same time that Justice Kavanaugh was working with the Ken Starr investigation into Clinton. They've been sideways. They have been on opposite sides of these kinds of issues. In fact, many people in the American left, perhaps including Max Stier, deeply resented that somehow that Clinton should never have been accused of anything related to Monica Lewinsky. They were offended that there was any prosecution at all. So, this was kind of a burr in the saddle kind of thing between Max Stier and Kavanaugh. The idea that Kavanaugh was standing up for Ken Starr in the investigation, and Max Stier was trying to defend Clinton, saying, so what if he fooled around with Monica Lewinsky? So they've been sideways on the very topic of sexual impropriety since the days of Ken Starr and Bill Clinton. So this guy, Max Stier, that's the one coming forward with this new allegation, which is not a new allegation at all. And the reason I want to go through that story was to say that, number one, by the way, if you buy the book by Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino, you will discover that they covered this exact story. They went through this allegation, laid it all out to point out there's just nothing to it. The other thing that's so interesting about this book, this is the new New York Times book by the two New York Times reporters. They're trying to essentially come out in favor of Dr. Blasey Ford, that somehow they want to resurrect her reputation. But even they have to acknowledge, in this incident she said happened in high school, her four friends, Blasey Ford's four best friends, who she named as people who would confirm her story, all of them said, I have no earthly idea what she's talking about. All of them said, never heard of it. And another interesting thing happened this last week, and then I'll get to the point of this story, then one last story. But interesting in the last week is that Blasey Ford's father, so the alleged victim of Kavanaugh from high school, Blasey Ford's father apparently told Kavanaugh's father that Blasey Ford's father, supported Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court and was glad he got the position. Just think about that. He didn't believe his own daughter, obviously. And I raised this story again with the manipulation theme of today. We have the American left endlessly trying to manipulate people who are vulnerable, people easily manipulated, people who can be duped into thinking things that aren't true. So we have the endless racist narrative, the racial narrative, the reparations narrative, the America is a deeply racist place narrative. We have that narrative going on the American left all day long, and it is for a purpose to seek political power. This thing, this trying to resurrect a new witness against Justice Kavanaugh, is the same thing. It's the same thing. It is the idea that women are easily manipulable. Women can easily be convinced to believe things that have no connection to reality and get offended and get outraged and then agree to support the Democrats because the Democrats are standing up for them. This is nothing else but a power ploy, a political power ploy by the left to bring this story up again. And I'm telling the other quick thought about it, and I really want to turn to this last story because it's kind of the most amazing story of all today. But the one last point is a lot of speculation that, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not well. I mean, I hope she's well. I don't wish illness, cancer, death on anyone. I hope she is well. A lot of speculation she may not survive through to the 2020 elections. And if she does need to leave the Supreme Court, there will be another opportunity for President Trump to nominate a judicial nominee to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's slot. This effort of the New York Times reporters to resurrect another false allegation, to pretend it's a news story when it wasn't, is seen by many including me, as continuing to keep the population, especially women, agitated, outraged, angry, frustrated, so that when a new nomination is made by President Trump, you'll have those leftists behaving in the same way they did during the Kavanaugh hearing, showing up at the Senate, pestering people in the cloakroom, chanting and waving signs and disrupting the proceedings. This effort of the American left and these two writers from the New York Times, this is just an effort to keep more Americans, especially women, agitated, frustrated, worked up into a tizzy over the treatment of women and sexual assault and the prevalence of sexual assault in this country. That's their motive.